Okay, another really important figure during the Ming Dynasty was Dong Qichong, and he was a literati theorist. His writing greatly contributed to the literati ideas. A little about him: he was a high official during the later part of the Ming Dynasty, which is interesting because we know that the officials were usually separate from literati, but he was a high official in the government. He was also a poet, painter, and calligrapher, and he developed the ideas of two types of Chinese painters. It doesn't have to do with the geographical location, despite the name of these two types of painters, but there were the northern and southern painters. Northern painters seem to have more of a traditional style and conservative work. Often they were the professional painters who focused on the technical rather than the artistic development. The southern style was more unorthodox, radical, and innovative, and they preferred ink and free brushwork, so these were your literati painters. Dong Qichong felt that one must first study previous painters before painting, and he felt the point of painting was not actually to copy the landscape, but to find this abstract and the emotional aspects in the way the landscape was painted. So he didn't want simply to see the picture, he wanted you to see what was in this picture, what was in the landscape you were creating. He painted the Qingbayan Mountains, and it was based on art by a previous artist, Dong Yan, but he had a difference in style that kind of flattened the look and wasn't going for this whole developed landscape look, but rather for the meaning in it. Now we get to the modern period, so a little bit of background about that. In the mid and late 19th century, China's military was defeated by Western powers in Japan, and spiritual resistance didn't solve those problems that were brought on by this change. New ideas began to filter in from the West and Japan. Demand arose for political and cultural reforms, and the Qing dynasty was overthrown in 1911, ending 2,000 years of imperial rule. China was reconceived as a republic, and many people traveled to Japan and Europe to study Western art during the first decades of the 20th century and returned to China to share what they learned, which I think you'll be able to see in a lot of the artwork that is coming up in these next slides. There's definitely a big difference in the more modern art as compared to Ming art and Yan art. Chinese painters began to be individualistic again in 1979, but the present-day communist government that was established in 1949 took away a lot of this artistic freedom. And again, as I said, the individuality just started to resurface somewhat recently, if you think about it, in 1979. Alright, this name is a little difficult to pronounce, but Wu Gunzong was a 1980s Chinese painter who depicted landscape scenes by fusing together a kind of French artistic training that he had with his Chinese background. And you can definitely see, again, these influences from other cultures. He developed sketches into free interpretations based on feeling and vision, and his work, Pine Spirit, which you can see here, it reflected this abstract expressionism. Some Chinese artists use Western techniques to join an international look to their painting, and some Chinese painters seek communion with nature to come to terms with human life. So the top painting is Pine Spirit, and this is the one that shows influence from his French training. And then the bottom one is from his mountain gallery. I don't know the specific title, but it shows this influence of nature and combining nature with a more modern style. I would like to point out that nature is still seen in this artwork, even though that was something that first came about a really long time ago, back when we first started this video and back when we first started looking at Chinese art in the Yuan Dynasty in 1279. So it's kind of interesting to see that nature and landscape painting is still prevalent today, but it's gotten this new twist to it. This is another example of some modern artwork, and it's actually currently at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, so that's kind of cool to point out. But I just thought I should include it because it's a really interesting piece, and it gives you another look at this kind of different modern artwork. Okay, now we come to the arts of Korea and the Joseon Dynasty to the modern era. So a little bit about the Joseon Dynasty. The Goryeo Dynasty was overthrown in 1392 by General Yi Seongji, and then he established the Joseon or Yi Dynasty. The Joseon regime rejected Buddhism but accepted Neo-Confucianism, so if you know anything about those religions. they became more involved with Neo-Confucianism. They adopted symbols of Ming imperial authority, such as the blue and white porcelain, and early Joseon era was a period of cultural refinement and scientific achievement. This map kind of outlines the Joseon dynasty. The Joseon ceramics, they had two distinct types of ceramics. There was the Buncheong ceramics, and then not ceramics but porcelain. They had painted porcelain. First, we're going to talk about the Buncheong ceramics. Joseon dynasty stoneware descended from Goryeo, the dynasty that they overthrew, descended from ceramics based on Goryeo dynasty ceramics, and they were known as Buncheong wares. They were slip inlaid into a repeating design, and elements were stamped into body in the 15th century. Also, they exhibited calligraphic brushwork, so calligraphy, that was painted into iron brown slip on a white slip ground, and this was seen in the 16th century. So calligraphy was well known in China, but it was also an art form that was used in Korea. Buncheong wares have a stylized floral decor. I don't know if you saw that in the Buncheong ware that was in the previous slide, but there is a floral element to many of them. And then also an important thing to note, between 1592 and 1597, Japanese armies destroyed many of the Buncheong kilns that were located in Korea. Okay, so as I said, there were two types of ceramics during Joseon dynasty, and we were talking about the Buncheong ceramics, but then there was also porcelain, and there was painted porcelain specifically. So Korean potters used an underglazed blue in 15th century that was very similar to the Chinese porcelains of early Ming period, and Korean court dispatched artists to porcelain kilns to train porcelain decorators. The Korean porcelains had paper and silk decorations, while Chinese used ceramic decorations. Although in the 15th century they used this underglaze that was blue, similar to Ming style, in the 16th and 17th century Korean porcelains used an underglaze that was an iron brown color. Korean porcelain jars have bulging shoulders, slender bases, and short vertical necks. The Korean design is to spread over a surface without borders, with balanced but asymmetrical design. So this is not a specific Korean example, but it does show you the blue pattern that was again used. Okay, then we have Joseon painting, and the Joseon art ranges from botanical motifs to include landscapes, figures, and animals. A specific example we have is Dream Journey to the Peach Blossom Land, which was painted in 1447 by An Jeon, and it was dated a Joseon secular painting. This particular painting illustrates a tale by poet Tao Kyon and recounts a dream about chancing upon a utopia. An Jeon, the painter of Dream Journey to the Peach Blossom Land, was influenced by the Northern Song dynasty and a Northern Song painter specifically. It's a landscape painting, as you can see. Landscape painting was very popular during this time, between the 15th and 17th centuries, and the main focus was usually large mountains surrounded by smaller trees, smaller hills, and usually a water aspect. As I said earlier, Korean painters were influenced by Northern and Southern Song dynasties and the Ming period.